a casting off of the modern promises is what we're in now with the postmodern sense of, maybe it's not about conforming to an objective out there truth, whether it's God or whether it's, the discovery of science. Maybe there is no meaning. Nietzsche is kind of the earliest, you could argue, postmoderns, in that he's actually drinking in what's going on and where we're headed. He's a bit of a tragic John the Baptist type in like, God is dead and we have killed him, and not in a kind of edgy, like, yeah, like that's cool. He was despairing over that. And in fact, that's how his life ended. The meaninglessness that art is reflecting, that architecture shows, and in just that sense of purposelessness of our generation.
Hi, Bobby Angel.
Tammy, thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I think it probably was your publicist or something that reached out, because you have a book that you want to talk about. I read your book. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the premise of your book and why you wrote it?
Sure. I have this latest book out, The Postmodern Predicament, with Sophia Institute Press. And the why of it was to take the blessings that I've had in being given an understanding of philosophy, which is sometimes something that's esoteric or impractical. Why do we need to spend time at all in philosophy? I was given a full picture of it and a way of understanding the story of how we got here. And I was blessed to teach for many years at an all-boys Catholic high school where mostly freshmen I taught, but I also taught seniors near the end who the curriculum was philosophy. So trying to make philosophy matter to 17 and 18-year-olds was a great challenge that I loved. And really wanted to, in layman's terms, kind of give a beginner's guide to how we got here and what do we do about it. So there's a lot of kind of bits and pieces of my life and where God has led me that has made its way into this particular book.
So in the book, you described the history of philosophy. And then in the second half of the book, you talk about postmodernism, I guess. And then the third part of the book, you talk about what we can do about it. And I agree with your premise. So we should have a good conversation about this. And I interviewed maybe a number of people about postmodernism because I knew nothing about it. I studied sciences in university, and I went to university first in 1980. There was not a lot of postmodernism before 1980, although when I went to university in 83, I could see it in education. In education, they were teaching cooperative games. They didn't want anybody competing anymore. And so you had to do a lot of modern dance, and you had to do a lot of this stuff that was taking you away from ballet, that was taking you away from competition. And I'd always been an athlete, so I was, aware this is strange. And I told my older brother what I was doing. He said, that sounds like crap, like that doesn't sound like you're getting anything. And teaching styles in education, teaching styles which made no sense and didn't really add anything. So education has been lost for quite a long time. And of course, now everybody has been touched by postmodernism, and we take it as, all the buildings that are built, we think, oh, look at that building. It's all glass. Can't tell where the windows are. You can't tell where the door is. It's not inviting like the old traditional buildings were, and so yeah, I've done a little bit of homework, and I understand rudimentary postmodernism, but I'm looking forward to listening to you and to see what you can tell my listeners so that they can also have a deeper understanding of what we've been given, what we are in the middle of, and how we can bring that back to a good place.
Yeah, amen to that.
Mm-hmm. So let's start maybe with history. We go back, just summarize those.
Right. Yeah. And so my hope in the book, I dedicated it to my wife, who likes hearing me talk about philosophy, but we have 5 kids, and so her energy and attention is pretty like, just give it to me brass tacks. So
I see you're good at this.
I nerd out on some of this stuff, but I also it's kind of the like, what's the point if you can't teach it, in a way? Like,
Right.
I've met brilliant people along the journey of life, and realize just because you're super intelligent, it doesn't mean you're a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm a great teacher. I'm just saying I have maybe a gift of being able to teach it to me like I'm in 8th grade, because that's part of me is still stuck in that superhero loving phase of life. So I can find the allegories and um, the metaphors in culture to at least hopefully make it land.
Well,
And
the
you,
stories and the metaphors, that's what people remember. So that'd be great.
well, even Jesus using parables and
Mm-hmm.
stories, like I could just give you the straight up facts, but I think also this what I would say is something that postmodernism gets right in understanding the importance of story and narrative, and that we are story driven creatures, and we want to see ourselves, and it's a healing thing as well to see ourselves in the context of a story where there is purpose and meaning to it all.
Purpose, meaning, limits too, right? Because you're on a quest, it's got limits. It's not in that direction or that direction. It's in this direction.
Yeah, even with our freedom in our free choice, we still want to know where the boundaries are. And you think
Mm-hmm.
of it's the banks of a river analogy, that the river has its power and its focus because of the banks. You can look at it as, this constricts me, rules are bad, this fence is bad. Or you can realize it's actually helping me. Like, the commandments properly understood are helping direct my energies to the good life. Just as I could play on the piano like my kids do with just utter abandon, it doesn't make music. And
Mm-hmm.
you actually learn the constraints of how does music theory work? How does the notes progress? And then you can make music. And then you can play jazz eventually, You can
Mm-hmm.
really in freedom
Mm-hmm.
use
Mm-hmm.
it.
Test the boundaries. Then you can test the boundaries. Yes. So you were talking about postmodernism, and we could go further from that if you want, um, because yes, there's a story within that um, they've caught on to that. They realize that it's true, but their analysis of it has gone in a crazy direction.
Right. Because all there is now, if you think of it as a dance or the tension between the objective and the subjective,
Hmm.
whereas maybe previous eras were very much looking at the objective, like that is the most important thing. We've now flipped it to where the subject, me, is the most important thing. And out of this, you get the language of, well, that's my truth versus your truth. And it always makes my eye twitch a little bit, because it's either true or it isn't true. Like, we could have difference of opinions, a difference of values, but truth is something outside of both of us. And this sense of I should conform myself to the truth, that there is even a truth, is kind of lost in the postmodern wash. And so when you look at the stats on the anxiety of this generation, a lot of people point to the technology, a lot of people point to politics, and there are elements of that are correct. But I would say there's ideas in the culture that are having consequences. Like, the phones in and of themselves are not the problem. Like, yes, they're making certain apps that are very like designed to keep you doom scrolling for hours, or make it difficult to switch away, or tap into those kind of tribalistic, or I want to be accepted. And so we're just like, the people designing these apps know what they're doing in a way. But if we have become unmoored from the meaning and purpose and a sense of what is my life about, then these things like technology, politics, do take in proportionate meaning in my life. And that's like the highest good for me, but it can never satisfy.
Well, what you said, one thing you said just made me think narcissism, because you said me, subject, is more important than uh, what's going on. It's all about reference to myself. That's anxiety and depression inducing just in itself. reference to yourself, because then you're always the most judgmental towards yourself, but also probably the most sensitive, because you're most it makes you more sensitive, and so everybody's sensitive now. There's way too much reference to what I want rather than what I can offer, right? Which is the biblical narrative. It's what I can offer that's been completely lost. And I agree with you. That's what I think the problem is.
Pope John Paul II had a brilliant line. He helped insert into this Vatican document. He said that man can only find himself through a sincere gift of self.
Right.
And when we serve, when we give ourselves away, willingly or perhaps in the throes of marriage or parenthood, where it's pulled out of us, getting over myself, we
Right.
find like, this is where I have meaning, this is where I have purpose. It is a prison of sorts to always be pointing the camera back on me.
Mm-hmm.
And narcissism as a word gets thrown around a lot these days, and there is certainly full-blown clinical narcissism. But then there's also, again, there's parts of us that they want to be seen, and they want to be seen as important or just validated in our existence. But certainly the age of the selfie and the age of, again, feeling like I always have to be or act like I'm on camera, it does lead to this hyper awareness of self where I'm not really free. I don't feel free to be me. And what's more, it does continue to add to the anxiety and even the fear of making a mistake. Like, I have to be perfect at all times. I have to be perfect in what I say online. I have to be perfect. And I mean, that's crippling, especially for this up and coming generation.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we're talking about this for our children to learn, so we can learn and help them not to avoid this trap that we're in. So you talk about philosophy, and then you talk about postmodernism. Can you tell me what you see as the genesis of postmodernism and how it creeped into our society?
Sure. So when I taught, I presented philosophy, the story of philosophy, as these four general time periods. You've got, and this is just broad, like kind of summing it up, is you have the ancient time period, the medieval, the modern, and now where we are, the postmodern. And so the ancients are Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all those guys who really started the story of Western civilization, of why, asking the questions why are things the way that they are, which give rise eventually to the medieval time period, which is sometimes pejoratively termed the Dark Ages, as if nothing good ever happened. And if you take philosophy in a secular like institute or university, it's often presented this way, that you've got the ancient time period, and then nothing important happened for 1500 years until Enlightenment, Descartes, and onward. And I was always like, I feel like something had to have happened. And so I was discerning the priesthood for a few years after college. I was kind of running away from God. Had gone into my faith, and at the same time was fighting what I felt was a pull towards the priesthood. Eventually relented and had 3 years of really beautiful formation. And we had to learn philosophy. In the Catholic trajectory, you learn philosophy before theology. And I'm with guys all ages, straight out of high school, myself, who was out of university, guys in their 30s and 40s, asking, why are we learning this? Mm-hmm. Like, why are we talking about the essence of a dog or chairness? Like, what is the point? And I was eating it up for some reason, and I couldn't even really explain it. I just knew, like, this taps into kind of the amateur philosopher I've always been, like, in my head and asking these questions. And in that seminary time, you see, with the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire, and minds like Augustine and Aquinas and the monks of Ireland are keeping civilization alive. And the philosophy is so intertwined with the theology, you can't really separate it. So it's not this clear category of like, you stay over, philosophy's over there, religion, you stay over there, you don't touch. They're together. Which is why, from our modern standpoint, we don't really know how to approach it, because it's too together. So we're just going to dump it all and kind of have this caricature of the medieval time period as, the evil church that tried to keep civilization down and people unread. But really, out of that, the Christian ethos You have the human person seen as made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, he or she is worth educating. Their life is worth protecting, which so therefore you've got the rise of hospitals that get created. You have the rise of universities. And therefore, too, hey, the buildings we make matter. So the architecture and how we design churches, you start to see like, we're going to invest in this because, and out of, so I devote a chapter in the book to art and architecture and how like that trickles out of the culture and what we value and what we believe. And that was one of the fastest ways I'd get the attention of my students was you show them art and architecture from the medieval period, the Renaissance, the paintings, the church buildings, and then you show these students stuff from the last 100 years, the brutalistic architecture of the Soviet Union, the surrealistic, just kind of like the modern art mess of kind of just like the chaos to having a urinal in a museum and like this is now art, or now we've got a banana duct taped to a wall. And it's like, what happened? Like, well, the ideas under the culture changed. And that's a whole, we can come back to that, but really quick. So out of the medieval time period, you got the modern time period, which eventually, because of the sciences are allowed to flourish, the world is stable and breathed into by the logic of God. Therefore, we can do tests, we can run experiments, and you've got the sciences really coming. But then this rift starts to happen of, well, what if we had the sciences and what if we had philosophy and these things apart from religion and apart from the heritage of faith? And it's very subtle. Like it's very subtle, this kind of turning and this separation. But then you've kind of got the humanistic focus of the Enlightenment of it's just going to be philosophy and reason. We're going to start to put the superstitious religious stuff to the side. And you've really got kind of this belief of uninhibited progress. Like, look at our technologies, look at the way in which we're creating new machines and discoveries. And it was a chaotic time in that the one Catholic Church is split now with the Protestant Reformation. You've got the printing press and you've got a whole new continent that's been discovered. So it's this age of like, wow, a lot of things are upside down. And yet we're certainly progressing as a human species to utopia. We must be headed there. But then you've got probably the bloodiest century known to man in the 20th century. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a lot of the myth of progress and we're a few steps from utopia really went out the window. So this kind of rise of nihilism and cynicism and, we kind of a casting off of the modern promises is what we're in now with the postmodern sense of, maybe it's not about conforming to an objective out there truth, whether it's God or whether it's, the discovery of science. Maybe there is no meaning. Maybe we are just hopeless and we should just make our peace with it. So Nietzsche is kind of the earliest, you could argue, postmoderns in that he's actually drinking in what's going on and where we're headed. And I had a seminary professor who taught him as he's a bit of a tragic John the Baptist type in like God is dead and we have killed him, and not in a kind of edgy, like, yeah, like that's cool. He was despairing over that. And in fact, that's how his life ended, was losing his mind and living like, do you realize what we've done in cutting ourselves off from a source of meaning and purpose and an objectivity, which is intoxicating to that rebellious part of ourselves. But we can see now like the fruit of how it's just kind of coming up all around us in the meaninglessness that art is reflecting, that architecture shows, and in just that sense of purposelessness of our generation.
Yes. Well, why? That's what you start with. Why? When I go on stage, Jordan says, all you have to do is have a question in mind. You just have a question in mind and then look at the people in the audience one at a time, talk to them, and then ask what, after you're done saying that, then say why that, and then go from there and then say why that. He said just constantly ask why, constantly ask why, and then you will find your way, because it's difficult to find your way unless you're asking. You don't find God's word unless you ask. People say, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. I don't see him here. It's like, well, you know what? You have to ask. If you don't ask, you won't, it won't appear. It won't manifest, I guess is what you would say, right? And then there's beauty. Isn't that interesting? Because there's beauty within the religion and within the churches. And that was built in order to be an offering up to God. Say, this is beauty. And when you go into a church, you still see beauty, and people don't know why, but it's a gift up to God. And I interviewed a man named David Clayton, and he wrote a book called The Way of Beauty. And he and his wife are trying to start a course on the way of beauty, which is a very good idea. But I'm thinking of modern art. I studied art, and I liked the Impressionist period. I liked it, but and it was using light. So it was, how can we make these colors in relationship to the light? Not so much about how can we depict this as a kind of a fact, but as an interplay of things. So people, I don't know, they started looking for an interplay of things and how something might be made into something new again. And that's a quest, right? That's an asking why. But at some point, we stopped asking why. When did that happen?
I think so. It's the instinctive question of a child.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll just keep asking it, and it's cute and it's funny, and then it gets annoying, and then you shut it down. And at some point, the sad thing is kids stop asking why. And then the question becomes, is this on the test?
Right.
And, as a former teacher, there's no greater question, that blesses your heart than that. Is this on the test? As if everything else you were saying is irrelevant. And I just want to know what I need to know to jump through this hoop to keep on the conveyor belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I wonder if there's kind of a micro and a macro answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
If there's because it ties back into wonder.
Mm-hmm.
It ties back into a sense of humility. Like, I don't know everything. And I think perhaps we're still asking why, but the belief or the hope in that there's actually an answer has perhaps diminished in our time period as we have separated any kind of realistic sense of there could be an answer out there. Because if we're just adrift in the cosmos, then I should just make the best of it, and there is no answer to the why, so stop asking. Is my take on why people aren't asking it anymore.
It's kind of mysterious. When you said during the Protestants broke away from the Catholics at the time of the printing press, that's when the Bible was just sent all over the world and people became literate themselves. That was that. But I didn't really think of that as a pull away from Catholicism, but it was. Oh, can you explain how, tell me more about that?
I've fallen down the rabbit hole of reading about orthodoxy as well, and reading about the East and the West. And I have seen some really ugly churches in my life. And so I am so drawn into like the beauty of icons and incense, and been reading a lot about Eastern churches and the Orthodox, and so about the great schism that happened there. And that's a whole other topic. But yeah, you've got largely one Christendom, like one church, since the time of Christ and the apostles until the Protestant Reformation and the splinters that come after it. And now the body of Christ has been wounded. And there's a host of reasons why it happened. And there are some political, there are some religious Luther himself is an interesting character once you really start digging into his reasonings and how he was perhaps even used as a bit of a pawn, because the church and the state were so too tied together. And I want to say too, there's a lot of good happening in the church today. And I mean that in the broad sense of like the body of Christ. Like I have seen, there's still infighting. I think perhaps as siblings go, there always will be, but I and my wife have just seen a lot of Catholic and Protestant initiatives coming together over the last 10, 15 years, whereas there used to be a lot of bickering and it used to be a lot of throwing stones at one another. I see there's a lot more inroads coming together. So
That's good.
yeah, I have a real sense of hope in what Christ is doing in his body, and perhaps even the divine plan of a discorded note. I'm still going to use it in the symphony.
Right.
Yes. And so you had the rise of the printing press giving way to that accessibility of all sorts of documents and letters, including the scriptures, being able to be disseminated in a common tongue. Because it used to be in the Western church all under that umbrella of Latin. And if you didn't know Latin, then you had to rely on the priests. You had to rely on the buildings, which is why stained glass really kind of became a form of teaching and teaching the biblical stories. And you'd have all these imageries happening, is a way to educate people and bring you into the story of salvation history. And so there's a great good in being able to read the Bible and read it in your own tongue. And so it leads to this, widespread accessibility of the Bible, which I'd say is a good fruit. And the problem is when you have cut yourself off from any sense of authority of how do I interpret it? Because now it quickly becomes every man for himself. In, well, I read it this certain way, or I interpret it this way, and how that over the last 500 years has continued to kind of ripple outward. Whereas maybe some things were kept tight, like some things were kept tight across the body of Christ. Like contraception was largely seen as a moral evil across all Christians until the early 1900s, when the Anglican Church decides, well, we're going to allow it in some scenarios. And like once you allow it in some scenarios, it's all open. And now only within the Catholic Church is there a holding fast to this sense of like God is the author of life, and we can't get in the middle of that. And so I would say that even like you see the good that can come about of it, but sometimes, I mean, maybe perhaps always, there are unintended consequences with the new technologies we come up with.
Yeah, it seems to, that when the Protestants were able to use the printing press to print the Bible, then with the common person reading the Bible, then people started to think, oh, well, I can do this on my own. And that was the move that start to move away even from the church itself. And it was a slow movement. It's taken a long time, but now it's pretty common for people not to go to church. And what does it mean to go to church? There's many things it means to go to church. What do you say are the meanings of church?
We all have churches. Like the Latin for religion is religiare, which is to bind together. So maybe you don't worship in formal religion, but we all put our highest worth or our worship to something. So for some people, that's CrossFit. Like that's their church. For some people, it's their diet or it's their Instagram account. For others, it's their politics or their online activities. So we all, by design, are communal creatures. So we want to belong. We want to find our tribe. We want to have a hub of worship, whether or not we call it that, where I'm around like-minded people. And so traditionally, there was a sense of there is something bigger than us. We call that God. And from him, all blessings flow. So I need to give him the time of day. And it's not a transactional thing. Like the Christian revolution is really, it's love. It's not about we appeal to God as if he's a genie or he's a cop out to get us. It's out of love. This is why he sends his son to die for us. And he's inviting us into that communion of love to be transformed. And so we go to church not because we have everything right, but because we need that grace. And we need that strength to get through 1 week at a time. Mm-hmm. And what you said, Tammy, as well, of like the sense of being able to read the Bible on my own, great. But then it becomes on my own. And so at the same time, so here too is where the whole zeitgeist, like sometimes it's just in the water of where we seem to be going as a culture. You've got Rene Descartes, who's one of the leading figures of the modern shift out of the medieval time period into the modern shift, who comes up with this saying, I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. And is this profound shift now from, yes, I should try to line up with what is objectively true, good, and beautiful, to now it's, you know what, actually, I'm going to make myself the center. And it's not just this automatic overnight, like, yes, and now we're all narcissists. It's just this slow shift in the culture, in the thinking, and what was already starting to happen. Mm-hmm. And perhaps even a tale as old as time, in that bentness of sin, that I want to, like, you shall be as gods, like I will be the center. I'm going to be the arbiter of what is good and evil. But we were moored to the dock. But now we have
the option of not being moored to the dock.
Yeah, and now we're at a time where we don't even remember there was a dock.
Right.
And we don't even know where the ship is headed.
Right.
So the postmodern sense is really just this kind of, we're floating there. I guess this is the way it's always been. I guess it's not going to get better. We should just kind of enjoy ourselves and our devices and entertain ourselves to death. Which
the first person who talked to me about postmodernism, Michael Young, mm-hmm. Vocal distance, he calls himself. And I didn't know anything. I just listened to him. And this one time, I think I interviewed him 3 or 4 times. I was trying to get a handle on it. And he described this ship, not even a ship, but really, like just being out on the ocean alone. It made me feel sick to my stomach. Just to listen and visualize and imagine that that's where I was so not good. It was so not good. Like that's not where we want to be. That's not where anybody wants to be, really. Even if they think they do, it's too risky.
It doesn't cohere with the cry of our hearts. That sense of, I guess I should just come to grips with my meaninglessness.
Yeah, it hardens your heart instead, right?
Right.
It doesn't soften your heart, it hardens your heart.
I read somewhere that the postmodern situation we're in, it really is a tragedy of fatherlessness.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Boy, it's complicated. There's so many things going on. There's the eating way too many carbohydrates. My husband interviewed a fellow. It might be up, I'm not sure. Anyway, he told me about this interview where he said this scientist told him that as hunter-gatherers, we would now and then find a bush of berries when we didn't have enough meat, and we would eat all the berries on the tree. Everything we could find, we would eat it all at once. But now we're offered this, bush of berries constantly. And physiologically, we're set up to eat all of it because we're only going to find carbohydrates once every month, 6 months, 3 months.
Seasonally.
Yeah, right. And so now it's no wonder that people are obese, because their insulin levels, as they eat way too many carbohydrates, they've gone up and up and up and up and up. And the doctors test their glucose levels because they can give them a drug for that. But they can't do anything about the insulin levels, so they don't talk about the insulin levels. But over time, as your insulin levels go up, then you are at risk for all the chronic diseases that you can imagine.
My wife and I, so my wife's from California, and so she's always been a little more crunchy than me. And I've certainly have read a lot and gone down this health road and learning about, yeah, all the stuff that our food's been changed and the
Yeah,
lifestyles.
corn used to be a little seed like a rice, and now it's this big long thing. Like it's completely different from what it began to be.
Yeah. So it's amazing. There's good things happening.
Oh,
And
there are good things happening. We have a lot to go, long ways to go though.
oh yeah,
A lot to talk about.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. But that sense of disintegration, if there's a word that could sum up postmodernity, it would be fragmentation. Like we have
Mm,
been fragmented into these pieces that we don't see the big picture. We don't see the big story of our lives. And we're also just so fragmented between the body and soul, between our devices, and lifestyle and food and all this stuff is not helping us to get a sense of being put back together as human persons, which are body soul composites. And so, Thomas Aquinas would say grace builds on nature, and our human nature matters. So it's not just my soul's important, therefore I can eat whatever I want. Nor is
no.
it that I'm going to maximize my nutrition and my strength, but who cares about moral character or virtue? It's like
Mhm.
it's a both and. We need to look
Mhm.
at to live a robust human life.
Yeah, really to flourish, you need all the components of life. You need the philosophical, the theological, and the material. You need it all work, and you have to and you have to practice it, right? You have to practice it, and we can do that little by little, whatever we can manage. But it's the practice, it's the consistency, it's the routine. I think that is helpful to people because people say, "Oh, I don't pray," or "I don't." Uh, Whatever it is they don't read the Bible or whatever. And I say, well, if you do anything every day, you can just add that to it. You can just say, if you are constant in something where you do it every day, no matter what, then that's where you put the thing that you hold as sacred. You put that there so that you can practice the sacred. It has to be practiced. That's what I think anyway. For me, it does every day, right? Every day I have to set my course and make sure that I haven't veered off in any direction. And then I'm likely to be able to see what's in front of my eyes. And there's miracles there, right? So, but you have to be really, it's a, it's a journey, it's an adventure because it's not easy to, you can't, like you said, take what you're wearing, who you're with. You can't take that as most important. It won't work. It won't work and it won't guide you where you need to go. And I know that we all need to go. It isn't up to one of us or even the select few that are speaking out and have a big following and all of that. That's fine. It's good. But it is actually up to all of us to listen and then take action.
And that happens locally.
Yes.
I think as you were saying, I just thought of like the family. And if you've
Mm-hmm.
got a following, if you're active online, that's great. Uh, but our own little 5 mile radius, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing with our families? Are we actually loving and interacting with our neighbors? Like, because, yeah, these little habits, these little things that I'm doing are making up who I am in the long run. And it is heavy when you think of it from the big picture standpoint, but from just trying to stay in the present moment, because that's all we have control over, is
Mm-hmm.
the little window of time I have today. So, what little things can I do to make myself better? And not perfect. Like we're trying to shoot for excellence, hopefully, but
Excellence. Yeah.
um, to just do a little bit at a time. And we interviewed Father Mike Schmitz
Mm.
recently, and he shared a story of a priest who told him, he's like, sometimes you just have to give God your lousy best. Like,
Right.
this is all I can manage today, and I'll just try to do a little bit better tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's all about showing up, right? It's all about showing up. And that's the practice of going to church too. It's not about who's there and how good the sermon is and or anything. Or if you have time, it's the just going there. You just go there with no expectations and make it a routine. And then one day when you need it, you'll be there and the people that you've been there with will be there and God will be there and you'll be able to deal with your tragedy. So going to church is, you mentioned small communities, and yeah, I thought, you know what, these people are the WEF is trying to organize these 15-minute cities
Yes, yeah.
with the wrong. It's just not the right idea, right? It's not a small community where everyone is aiming up, because you've all got this idea that God is at the center and you're going to do your best to pay attention to the moment and do the next right thing. And so everybody's doing that. And so there's great flourishing going on in there. It's like, no, we're going to limit you. We're going to limit you to these places. You'll be you'll be punished if you go outside of, it's just the wrong. So they have an inkling. They have an inkling that this small community is a good idea, but they've lost the transcendent, and so they don't know why it's necessary.
And with that, it has to become mandatory.
Yeah, right. It becomes um, a totalitarian project.
Right. I am not voluntarily opting in to share my goods with the community or live in these intentional communities for the sake of a higher purpose. It's the state is demanding I do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a bunch more of this top-down authority making the decisions, not realizing that it all has to come from the family.
Right. Which there's a lot of. I have a chapter in the book, which is a bit tongue in cheek, called Everything is Marxist, but
Hmm.
it's not really tongue in cheek, but it's looking at the wider spread of ideas that underpin Marxism. It's not just as an economic system, but as an ethos that looks to dismantle the human family, male and female, rewrite culture. Like it's not just about economics. It's something much more dangerous that is really kind of seeped out beyond the universities that I think a lot of people have seen it now. But the problem is fundamentally that it gets the anthropology wrong. It gets our understanding of the goodness of the freedom of male and female, the goodness of the family as the most important cell of society. It sees that as a threat that has to be attacked versus like this is what it's all about.
It's upside down, right? It's upside down, and if it's upside down, and so if God is up and it's upside down, that means that the devil is up,
Hmm.
right? Brutal.
So my book, I try to be very pastoral because I've been involved. My wife and I have been involved in ministry in different settings ever since we got out of our high school years, and
Mm.
so I have such a heart for people and their pain and their suffering, and I haven't shown great mercy in my life and my mistakes, so I'm quick to extend it. And so my hope was to be very pastoral and very understanding of why does it make sense that we are here? Why does it make sense that a young person today is going to gravitate towards Marxism or feel that anxiety or feel so uh, hurt by the abuse they've suffered under the hands of authority or the church or their family that they would feel the need to run to these ideas, to run to deconstruction or some of these other um, philosophies. So my hope was to also try to. I'm not here to like slam dunk on people.
Mm-mm.
It's to, yeah, listen and also be a beggar, showing other beggars like, hey, the real food is over there. Like I understand why this is attractive, and I understand why we've been hurt or why we feel adrift, but we've actually got a way forward over here.
Yeah, there's an answer.
Yeah, there's a lot of great philosophy books out there, but sometimes they don't really tell you what do we do next. It's like really well written and how we got here, but then it's like, and I guess we're stuck. Good luck, everyone.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about what you do next.
It's I made sure it was the subtitle of the book was A Roadmap for Recovery, not The Roadmap, because there's no silver bullet, and there's a lot of common sense ideas in it where it's learning to be human again, and it's learning to, kind of as we talked about earlier, investing in the art and the architecture that informs us, because it's kind of like the dance of law and culture, where it informs the culture, but it also educates. So art in some ways is reflecting what's going on in the waters, which is why out of the atomic age, you've got the stuff of Salvador Dali and the melting clocks and this sense of like, is the world about to end? Well, the art reflects that, but the art also educates. It also is teaching us what is beauty, or do we even believe beauty exists? And so part of it is because we can't go back. We can't rewind the clock. We can't time travel and pretend like, just if only we went back to 19 whatever, everything would be fine, or 17 whatever. It's like, no, we're here now in the time God has appointed us, and we can stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and adapt it. So investing in art, in architecture, if you are an artist, to use your skills for good and learn the old ways, learn how we got here. And then I see a lot of buildings, I see a lot of churches that are reclaiming proper architecture, that actually you walk in and you're like, yes, like this is beautiful. This draws me up.
That's good.
I'm seeing new church builds that have this in mind. And, you mentioned earlier, Tammy, it's the, like the investment in this stuff. You think about centuries ago, it's like, I'm not going to see this building complete. I'm doing this for my kids and for my grandkids.
Right.
And so to have that sense of this is beyond a 4-year election cycle. Like I want to be a part of putting this back together again. And it's like when you've got these old dilapidated buildings, but nature starts taking over again, like life finds a way. Like as Christians, there's always reason to hope.
Yes.
Whether it's like out of the martyrs of old, where it's like the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Just when you thought the empire couldn't get any stronger, it crumbles, and there is Christ and his church standing there. So there's always reason to hope. It's going to look different. And, not everything postmodernity has given us is bad. In the sense too of like, it's a bit of a rebellion against the modern collapse of everything must be put under a microscope to be meaningful. And there's a right rebellion to that, in a way of like, how about we reclaim some sense of spirituality? How about we, with seriousness, how about we reclaim some sense of, what is useless is actually maybe good for us. So things like art and music and friendship. C.S. Lewis talked about this. It's some of the most life-giving human elements in your life are useless. Like it's not about utility, which has even infected how we look at the human person. Are they useful? And if they're not useful, from the unborn to the elderly or to the injured, we should discard them.
Yeah. It's just another sign that we are not in that spirit of what is the spirit? The spirit, I think of love and trust. I've been thinking about what the spirits are that I want to live by, and that, or not that I want to live by, that, but that I want to aspire to, is love and trust.
So
to see someone or something and to trust that I can navigate it and be and communicate with it and with people, because we've lost that too, right? Nobody wants to negotiate, or the communication is fractured. So it's love and trust. We can find that in our communities, in our families, if we can reconstitute them again.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game.
No, absolutely not. We're not in a petri dish. We're built for adventure. We're built to find something new on the horizon. That's what we're built for. And that's exciting and worth striving for every morning. And it might end up that all it is that you got to help your mother do something that improved her day.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the adventure for the day, and to be okay with that.
Yeah,
But then,
because
if things get better, then you can maybe leave your community and go further abroad and make a difference there. But you have to start at home. You really do have to start with yourself and with at home and at home before you can go anywhere.
yeah, because otherwise you're romancing the escape.
Yeah. When I left home when I was 18, I said I didn't understand my parents and what they were doing. And I told them I was leaving and I was never coming back. I was 18, very defiant. And that, I didn't even know when I said that what it meant to say that or what the consequences of that would be. But all I did was say that. And then within 10 years, there was a scenario where I really needed the counsel of my mom and my sisters, and I didn't reach out. And all I had done was say that. So you have to, it's very interesting. You got to be, well, I have found I have to be very aware of of my words. Very aware, because you don't know the end result of those words for maybe some time.
Did you not reach out because there was that was a roadblock within yourself?
Yes, definitely. There was a roadblock within myself. And then I ended up making decisions that were not in my best, uh, not to be a nurturing and also courageous step. I didn't make that step. And so it's a lesson. It was a lesson for me. I needed that lesson. I needed to find gratitude for my parents, which I did. Thank the Lord, because they're gone now, and I had some good years with them, and boy, am I grateful for that. And so, yeah, it's we have to be aware. We have to be aware, and it's really helpful I find it's really helpful to read a chapter in the Bible in the morning and pray the rosary to orient myself upward for the day so that I am ready for whatever challenges God sends me that day. And I can be grateful for the challenges no matter what they are. So it's a lot less, I don't get so mad I never did, but I don't get so mad in traffic. Right? Traffic, you're in your own car, you can really curse them and, in your own car. But if you can, for me anyway, if I organize myself, then I'm much more likely to be self-reflective in the day. Yeah.
A priest challenged me years ago to always have a rosary on you at any given point. So
Yeah.
I try to keep it in my pocket. But even that practice of the presence of God in the mundane, in those little every moments of traffic, or the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Like just breathing that throughout the day of okay, Lord, I am in this circumstance with a family member or slogging at work or on a commute, or just in my chores or changing another dirty diaper. It's like, I can give you this moment. It's not a waste. It doesn't need to be in a chapel. It's in the here and now, even in the suffering. Like one of my favorite books to gift former students was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Mm. And, between him and then Father Walter Ciszek, With God in Russia, or He Leadeth Me, who was he was a Jesuit priest who was captured by the Russians. They thought he was a Vatican spy when he went over to serve the people during World War II, and was sent to the gulags, and he lived through some agonizing years of solitary confinement in the work camps, but came out of it essentially with a Viktor Frankl-esque parallel of, we don't always get to choose the circumstances of life, but I can choose my attitude, and to even offer those little moments of suffering to say, I'm supposed to be here.
Right. Yeah. And that, wow, having that moment, because I had a moment like that, that just changed my life completely. Changed my life completely. It wasn't that I was a bad person before that. I was doing my best, but there was a deep lesson that I had to learn, and I had to go through a deep, dark time to learn it. That's life.
That's wisdom.
That's wisdom. That's growing older. That's growing up. I guess that's growing up. Just like having a baby is growing up. That torture that you go through to push that baby out. Oh my goodness. But the glory on the other side it doesn't even compare. You know, my daughter's pregnant again, and she just had a baby last December, and she goes, "What am I doing? What am I doing? It hasn't been that long," she goes. But there we are.
A sibling is one of the greatest gifts you can give to a child, you know?
That's for sure.
So it's a lot of work, but it's a gift.
I had 3 older siblings, and then there were 5 years before I came along. My mom lost a baby in between, but our family never talked about that baby that was lost, and so I always kind of felt like an only child. But I have since I did a family constellation workshop where we identified everyone, whether they were present or not, in our families. And I realized that if I had been more aware, more grateful, more, I don't know exactly what it is. This baby that was lost between my sister and I, he was, and I even know it was a boy, he was there. And so I had a brother who was close to me. I wasn't separated from my siblings. And I only learned that a couple months ago, but that changes everything. Changes everything for me to realize where I am in relationship to the people I love, whether they're here or not, whether they've been lost or not, um, yeah, and they're not gone. They're there, which is another thing. Their spirit is there, which is really sustaining. So a sibling, like you said, a sibling is a gift. Oh my goodness. A sibling is a gift. Parents are a gift. A baby is a gift. We're gifts to each other.
Our parish here in Texas, they do every November, they'll have a mass for families who've lost a child, whether in miscarriage or infant loss. And it's this beautiful gathering of people that some are holding on to this very privately, this source of pain. Mm-hmm. My wife and I she's had 3 miscarriages. We know many friends who've also suffered that or struggle with infertility to get pregnant at all. But every year, our pastor will say something like, and we look forward to the day in which we will see our children again. And it gets me every year because
I bet it does.
It's this, it's just so easy to focus on what is physically in front of you. And that is what's real, even for we people of faith. And yet to realize those we've lost are not gone. And the hope of like, this life is not it. There is a ... at death, but it's not the final end. Including for those siblings, children parents we've lost. You may have heard too, how in the womb of a mother, there are the cells of all the previous children.
Right. No, I haven't heard it said that way, but
So there
in the
is,
womb, eh?
yeah. So
Is that
like,
right?
yeah, like
Oh,
baby
wow.
number one, but then baby number one comes, but there's some like cells left over from that kid that baby number two gets. So even for those of us
Hmm.
who've like had a sense of like, I always had a sister, or I feel like I've had a brother or something, it's like, maybe.
Huh,
And
that's funny, because my older siblings, they never missed that brother, but I really did.
right.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I always, similar situation. I always felt like I had a sister, and then come to find out, like I was 20 or 21 at Thanksgiving. Somehow it comes out that my mom had miscarriage, but just
Hmm.
never talked about it. And I was like, whoa, like, what it does for the birth order, what it does for your sense of, the family, because it goes just beyond like who's materially, physically here.
Right. I liked this exercise we did because we chose people within the circle to play the part of the parents and each of the children. So when we all stood up, there were 5 kids, not 4 kids, because I had always had 3 siblings, but no, I actually had 4 siblings. And that was good. That was good. It was right. It feels complete.
Mm.
Yeah. And so we underestimate the power of those that have passed.
And in the Catholic Church too, you have that distinction above of those who have been canonized saints, like those who have been officially declared to be by the church. And I think there's a whole lot more lowercase s saints and people that we've met in life that it's like, yeah, she was a saint, or she
Right.
was that, more than the church will ever officially be able to like recognize in the lineup.
Hmm.
But those that, miracles have happened that are unexplained medically or otherwise, that's evidence for their closeness to God. And we can lean on them for assistance.
Yeah. No, the whole idea that postmodernism is without God, it's without religion. Um, it's a very narrow road. I mean, I mean, to be, uh, to be properly in reverence to God, that's a very narrow road. That's for sure. So maybe when you're in a postmodern scenario, then it's well, then it's just too multi. It's like there's too many options. Maybe that's what it is that people feel. That's what I felt. Too many options. Too many options. I can't hold on to anything because what do you hold on to exactly? And people, you're supposed to be letting everything go and be attending to God's will, but here we are on the earth and in the material world, attending to our loved ones. Yeah, you're supposed to have the right reference to them, but paying attention to them. But it's hard to pay attention to something if you don't know where it sits in terms of your relationship to one another. How do you relate then? So then maybe you just hang up. Then you feel isolated. Yeah, yeah. Well, you can overcome that. That's not necessary.
It's all flavors of ice cream in the postmodern sense. Like, if you want to believe in God, religion, great, that's nice for you, but it doesn't land as therefore it's true. It's like, well, if it's so, it's reclaiming a sense of there are things outside of me that are true and worth living up to, and worth doing the painful process of looking inward and seeing where might I be deficient, what do I need to work on, because it's all just kind of values of where we can't even call anything good or evil anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really problematic, because as little kids there's a real sense of right and wrong. There's real eye for an eye sense of justice in toddlers and elementary kids. And I think the nuance is so needed. And I think we're awful at trying to live in the middle. We tend to go to extremes as a culture. It's like we're here and then we swing over here, and it's like, the answer is in the middle usually. And realizing there are shades of gray, but there are things that are black and white, and there are things that fall into the hierarchy of, C.S. Lewis would say, you put first things first. Like you put God in God's place, and then everything else, second, third, fourth things come into right position. I can love my wife, I can love my children, I can enjoy my job rightly. But if any of those things become the most important thing, if my girlfriend takes the place of God, if my work, if my striving for popularity or wealth become the highest thing, well, it can never live up to that because it was never meant to. And I will frustrate myself and crush that thing. So, yeah, it's like I give God the first fruits, however meager and distracted and poor that might be. But then I also can have the strength to love rightly my family and my kids, and not make anything else an idol, which is a daily reset. I have to recalibrate every day and try to do a little bit better. And you've said the word adventure a couple times, and from a young age, I always gravitated to that theme of looking at life. It is an adventure, and it's not just some storybook thing. It's because it's true.
Well, when you do God's will, you don't know what's going to happen. That's the definition of an adventure.
Right.
So we have no idea what the outcome will be when we take our step towards what seems like a necessary and inspired goal and walk towards it. We don't know where it's going to go, and it goes in places we never would have expected. That's what's so fun about it. It's that if I had planned this, we wouldn't be here. We'd be I don't know where we'd be, but wouldn't be here. And then that's what gives you such gratitude for God, is that if you live with God's will, where he takes you is, it can be challenging, and you have to be courageous. He doesn't take you to somewhere boring. He takes you somewhere interesting and meaningful, and that then you don't have to look to what you're lacking. Yeah, it's a beautiful journey. It's a beautiful journey with God.
Even just the gratitude for existence, because that's something that's so easily taken for granted, is that I don't have to be here. And even things like health, like we don't appreciate till it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Or family members that we just think owe us their love or owe us whatever. It's like, no, they don't. And so to shift towards an attitude of entitlement, which may not even be malicious, it might just be what has crept in, feeling owed. I'm owed good health or a good job or the love of family, and realizing actually I'm not owed anything. It's all gift. It's all blessing. And I can receive that and be thankful. And then turn around and serve others. Like that makes a meaningful life.
Yeah, I find that if I'm in a frame of mind that makes me feel self-pity or selfish in any way, then I pray. I pray for guidance, and it'll usually have to do with someone or something that I'm dealing with. And then I pray until I see an action I can take, an offer I can make, and then all that selfishness disappears. Yeah, so it's that's a miracle. See, there's a miracle, and we don't think of those things as miracles, but they are, because here it was. Well, I changed my attitude. How'd that happen? Well, that was a gift. That was a gift, and I accepted it. It's our part. We have to take our part in it. because God offers us gifts all the time. I'm sure we don't accept. So it's hard to be aware enough to accept the things that are given us, and then to be aware enough to give that further. You know, you were talking about a hierarchy of values, and Jordan and I were in some southern state giving a lecture, and we were in a restaurant having dinner, and there was a young man who came up to the table and served us, and he may have said that he was a fan of my husband's, and when he left the table, I said, you should give him offer him a ticket for tonight, see if he's, available. And so when he came back, Jordan offered him a ticket, and he said he was available. And then he said, what brought you to my work, which he often asks. And this fellow said that he had been living a postmodern life. He had been feminizing himself because he felt like that was necessary. And living a life of victimhood. So playing a game, he called it a game, the game of victimhood, that he would, who could be the most hard done by, which is what was the game. And somehow someone he knew offered him Ben Shapiro, and he listened to that a little bit, and then he found my husband and he listened to that, and then he decided to separate himself from this postmodern idea. He started to go to the gym, get strong, take on responsibility and meaning, and now his life is better. And we hear those stories, Jordan and I, as we travel around. We hear those stories, and they're such a gift, because then it gives us courage to continue. We have to hear those stories. People are very kind, and they don't want to interrupt us when we're at the airport or in lunch or anything, but those stories are what makes it all worthwhile.
I'm sure it's overwhelming and humbling to get the quantity of feedback that you guys do.
Yep, it definitely is. And it's also when I see something. Oh, I saw a girl. We were sitting in a little group speaking to people from Alberta. They had come and they wanted to speak about how to, make things work well in Alberta. There was one girl, it was mostly men, but there's one woman sitting there, kind of not even sitting straight and not writing notes or anything, just sitting. And I noticed her because there are only about 10 people there. And I mentioned that I'm going to the Ark because we're leaving for an art conference soon, in a couple of days. And I've offered to chair a meeting there on family and career. Can we have them both? That's what they named it. But I want to talk about a timeline for young women so that they can be inspired to fall in love and get married and have kids, because this has to happen soon in their lives. And so it has to be a priority in order for it to happen. And I mentioned that in that little group, and the woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I'd like to get a transcript of that. And I said, I'd see if it was going to be videoed. I don't know if it's going to be. But I said, it's just a small, 45-minute meeting. I want to see what the interest is and I want to see what the controversy is. I want to see what's happening in that space so that I can take it to wherever, maybe a conference next for young women. But she said, what? She said, I don't know how this came up. I'm not going to have a baby. I don't want to have a baby. I said, how old are you? She said, 28. She said, my parents are getting divorced. I said, well, that's too bad your parents are getting divorced, but that's not your life. You're 28. You have a life. You have a life to begin. And I think that's what she wanted to hear, because she stood there and listened. She didn't walk away. She wasn't upset by what I said. She wanted to hear that her life was worthwhile. I said, it's time for you to find love and get married. That's the time you're in. You're 28. Time is now, like right now. And but it upset me. And I went to sleep that night and I woke up in the morning and I was quite upset. I didn't know why I was upset, but it didn't take me too long to realize, oh, it was this woman the night before. So then I said to Jordan, um, values, I said, I feel like God is up at the top, and then you are there, and then my children are there, and then my grandchildren are there, and then I'm there. And then I said, no, let's see. It's God, my husband, my children, my grandchildren, and what I can do for others. I said, I'm really even not there. We have this whole thing backwards because it it isn't about us. It's actually not about us at all. It's what we can do for others. Isn't that funny how we've got it all backwards? Not funny, but it's disturbing, I guess.
Yeah, no,
But something we can change. It's something we can change.
we've inverted it where it's now me at the top,
Right,
and
inverted it.
that's satisfying. But also just so myopic and so empty at the end of the day. And I think one of the great blessings that you and your husband have given this generation is that the mothering and fathering that so many people haven't had. Because you talk about like postmodernism as a wound of fatherlessness, that's like lowercase f at the domestic family level with absent or abusive dads. But then even I don't really believe God exists. So therefore there's nothing really to anchor me or bolster me
Right.
up. Or I mean, my grandfather was always telling me to stand up straight, put my shoulders back. And just
Oh, yeah.
that simple thing of act like you have dignity, like your body posture matters, face the world with your strength, like all these things that were he didn't say but are wrapped up into that stand with confidence. And your husband giving very similar lessons to a generation that has needed that fathering. Like, I believe in you. You have what it takes. Do hard things. Take care of your life before you help criticize someone else's. And so
Mm-hmm.
even that challenge to parenthood and to motherhood, I just think there are so many people wounded by divorce and wounded by neglect or what they didn't have. It's not just economics. It's not just sexual freedom. Like, that's on the surface, but there really is just there's again a kind of a postmodern nihilistic despair that can come out in some of the climate alarmism, or that who would bring a kid into this world, which is kind of every generation says that at some point. But like, the best hope you have for civilization is to have a kid. Like, that's the sign of a culture that believes in itself, and even from a transcendent standpoint. And I mean, I was listening to some other podcast and they were talking about this concept of, maybe it was your husband, like, you can't grow up fully unless you've had a kid, because it just
Yeah.
forces you to get over yourself.
I can remember having my first child and going home to my husband's cottage in Saskatchewan. And Jordan was the first of his families. I was the last in my family. So there were many kids on my side, but none on his side. And I went there with our new baby and we put her in a jolly jumper on the porch of the cottage in front of the lake. And all the adults were there, and there had to be maybe 5 adults there. And we just sat there for the afternoon and watched her, played with her and watched her. And I felt such relief to realize that it wasn't about me at all, that it was about my daughter. It was such a wonderful change of attitude. I was going, if anybody goes into a situation, and I think people are going to want to know what I know, where I've been, what I'm up to, and all of that stuff. Nobody wanted to know anything about that. They just wanted to look at my daughter. I thought, wow, isn't that great? So great. Now all I have to do really is really uh, nurture her as she grows, and to um, offer support when she has challenges, and find out what she's interested in, and offer more and more of that so that she can flourish. And wow, what an opportunity. Yeah, children, I always wanted to have a baby, thank goodness. I was confused by the narrative. I wasn't sure I wanted to be married, because they're already back in uh, the 70s, they were already starting to treat fathers on TV and stuff. There were still some good fathers in the 70s, but that all went away on TV. Then there were uh, no good fathers on TV. Really, like, where'd that come from? Is that another thing of leaving? If you're leaving God the Father, then what's coming next is your earthly father. So yeah. Mm.
Yeah, they're all buffoons. And so, like, the really good fathers stand out. It's like, wow, that show actually had a good dad who showed up. Like, that's out of the norm now. But it's a beautiful thing to see when you do see it. I was thinking too about the two things. One, how a child helps you reclaim some sense of wonder, like seeing things through the eyes of your kid who's seeing a butterfly for the first time, or every crack in the sidewalk, we have to stop and examine it. It's like, oh man, kid, can we get them moving? But it's like, no, this is a magical thing. And so it is worth slowing down for in an age where I'm trying to multi or triple task and always on a device. It's like, just look at the flower, just look at the crack in the sidewalk and wonder. But then how also you have a child, you're blessed with a child, and you get a glimpse of this is how you're loved by God unconditionally. Like, in our sin, in our shortcomings, in our failures, like, there's nothing you can do that's going to make me stop loving you.
Yeah.
And we don't all have that experience where that's where there's a lot of wounds and a lot of defense mechanisms and stuff arises when we're not loved properly. But when you become a parent, there is that beautiful responsibility. And I think for me, an awakening of, you get a glimpse of, like, this is what it means when you say God loves you. And it can be overwhelming. Like, you're not worthy of that and you can't live up to that. You just have to receive it.
Yeah, that's what my husband says to me. He says, I love you. Are you ready for that? Are
Mm.
you ready? Are you willing? Are you ready to be loved? I will love you. It's beautiful. Are you ready? Are you willing? It's very, very, very beautiful. I grew up, my dad, he drank too much. He partied too much. I didn't see him as much as I wanted to, but he was a lovely man. I loved him so much. I missed him a lot, because of that. And my mom, I think, I only learned this after she passed away. She probably had a family abuse scenario when she was a young kid, so her trust was damaged, and so she taught me not to trust my dad.
Mm.
But I learned, over time by I actually filled out Jordan's self-authoring, and one of my goals was to heal my relationship with my father, because it wasn't what I had as a child, and I wanted it back. And I was very fortunate. I went to visit my dad when my mom had dementia, and he'd put her on a medication that made her paranoid, and she thought he was having an affair. And I thought, oh, this is just like high school, what I remember from high school. So it wasn't my mom, or it wasn't my dad, it was my mother. Because here he was changing her diaper and feeding her, and she was worried he was fooling around on her. He was 72, 3-year-old man. And I asked my dad to just take her off all the medications. He did, and she turned back into her sweet self. And it was no problem. But I got to be there for this one moment where I learned about my relationship with my parents, and the proper scenario, what actually happened. Oh, well, then that solved my problem. It solved my relationship with my dad, was healed, and we had a beautiful relationship for the last 20 years of his life. There was no animosity between us. It was total trust. So what, these things, although they happen to us young, and then we have some trouble with them, and they can also then cause trouble in your own marriages and everything. But if you are asking and abiding by truth, and you might get a chance to learn what happened, and then you can be free of that. There are answers out there for you if you ask, truly ask, but not for anything else, but just for what's God's will. That's all. Boy, it's a narrow road, I've found.
You said love and trust earlier in our conversation, and I think trust is one of the linchpins here. Is if we don't feel like we can trust, well, then we're going to be a ball of anxiety, because then it all relies on me, and I've got to be in fight or flight all the time.
Right.
But if I can trust, those around me actually care for me. If I can trust in the healthy relationships that want to love me and I can receive that love, then I get that corrective emotional experience that I really am hungry for underneath all the defenses. And if I can trust that God exists without all the evidence, because we sometimes want all this stuff spelled out, and it's not. God is much more mysterious. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to play that game. You're going to just have to receive the mystery. If I can still trust in that, and that he is a good father and he has my back, then I can live with a lightness and humor and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really the way out of this postmodern predicament, is learning to trust again. And really from the beginning, like, God was trustworthy all along. And sometimes that's only learned through the school of life.
Yeah. Well, we're given this life to. It's our challenge. It's our challenge. It's a puzzle. I've kind of said too. It's a puzzle, and I'm trying to find out how to put the pieces in right. And so it's an adventure. It's a mystery. It's a puzzle. It's all these things, and that's that's what we're given to take into our hearts as something that we will be true to. Let's see, let's find out, let's make things good, let's do that. Yeah,
It's a participation.
it's the participation. Yes, willingly, right?
Yeah.
Voluntary participation.
Because sometimes there's this intellectualizing, I just want to figure it out in the abstract. Just give me the right podcast or the right book and I'll figure it out in my head. And it's in the dance, in the participating of the puzzle, of the adventure, that you find your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my husband and I, we didn't plan to be on stage together. I was doing logistics for him, and then my daughter was opening the show for him, but she had a baby, so she said, "That's fun, Dad, but I have to go home."
Mm-hmm.
And then he turned to me and he said, "Well, do you want to do it?" And when I was ill, I prayed to God. One prayer, I said, "If you see it in your heart that I should live, I promise that I will speak publicly." And so when he asked me, I had to say yes. And I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never spoken publicly at all. I'd never been on a stage. But I went and I did it. And I just asked for courage and strength and prepared as much as I could beforehand, but then went out and spoke, and have learned since then. And it's been a different life. It's been a different life since I've decided to pay attention and not think that I'm the guiding light, but there's a guiding light that I have to follow and be aware of.
Pope John Paul II he said, life with Christ is a great adventure.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing like it.
It's not about, becoming a copycat. It's not about becoming just a stoic statue. It is about a life fully alive, and where I am not necessarily writing the story. Like, I have free agency, but I'm also surrendering in trust where this road is going. And so opportunities, like you said, to public speaking and things I never saw coming, it's God is not a tame lion.
No.
So
No, watch out. Be careful what you ask for. That's what my husband always said. Be careful what you ask for. Yeah. Yeah. He's coming back tonight. I had to come home early because we're going to have another grandchild. So I had to get here.
you say that as if it's imminent.
Oh, yeah, it is. Within a week. There's signs already that this baby is coming. Little signs that Mom is telling me that she's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty sweet. That's her third baby.
Can I ask you the transition to grandmother? Because all of our kids are 10 and under, so it's little people, little problems. But what happens when you see your kid having their own kid?
Well, my father died not just this December, but the December before. And I had a dream after he died. We had a celebration in the summer, so it was sometime in that period of time. I had a dream, and I dreamt I saw my dad as a man just leaving high school. And people don't, children don't know their dads when they were young.
Right.
And we don't even think about it. We don't even realize it. But there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't know when we look at our dad. And so I see him, and I've seen pictures of him, so I know he was probably 17 or so in this dream. And I see him, he's walking towards me, and then he starts putting on hats, different hats. He's putting on hats. And then he finally puts this hat on. It's this kind of white, puffy, it covers him right down to his arms, so his arms can't even move. And it's like a stovepipe or something for an industrial uh, um, complex. He's a cog in a wheel. And I realized that my dad has taken on the life of a father and of a man. And I tell him how grateful I am that he was my dad.
Yeah.
And then I thought about my children. And I thought, you know what? They're married. They're 33 and 32 now. They're married, and they are providing for their children, and they're having children, and they're setting up a home and a business and a life. And I'm grateful for them for changing from children to an adult and taking on the responsibilities that entails. And so that's becoming a grandmother. Or at least that's how I did it. I understand from my own experience of being a child that that's what my children are doing. That's really something to see. Because I see them now, like, what do you think of your dad? Well, he's much older. When you're a child, he's much older than you, goes to work every day, comes home tired. Sometimes he can be playful, and he can offer you, whatever he offers you, sports and all kinds of things. He'll take you on trips and show you the world. And, dads do all kinds of things. He taught me to be, I think about what he taught me. He taught me to be courageous and to not be afraid and to shy away. That wasn't something that was going to end well. He would tell me, to be smart and careful and take care of myself so that I didn't get in trouble, and he instilled that in me. And so I can be very grateful for that, and to see that in your children, that's what they're doing. They are now taking on that role. Wow. Something to see. Amazing. And grandchildren, they ask for their grandparents because we're not here very much, but they ask, when if Julian, my son, if he calls me and I answer the phone, his little 2-year-old say, "Where's Grandpa?" Like right away she wants to know where are they? When are they going to be here? It's wonderful to be loved and wanted. Nothing better than that.
Yeah.
And my brother might say to Jordan, "What's best? You've attained this. You're so famous. This big, big personality in the public life. It's my family." He says, "It's my family." That's what's kept me alive through all my trouble. It's my family. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it sure is. It's so beautiful. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's so beautiful. I want everybody to be able to experience this growing up and taking on the responsibility of parent and living the adventure that entails.
I mean, even
Yeah.
from a family tree standpoint, to look back on what the sacrifices that got you here to this point, to existence, and what little can I do to keep it going, you know?
Yeah. Right. Right. We have a chance to be a cog in the wheel that just makes it all turn just a little bit more, and yeah, on its way up. Yeah, makes it all worthwhile. Makes you sleep well at night.
Hmm.
Allows you to sleep well at night and to get up with a clear conscience and all of that. It's important. All those things are important. You can't really. It's a Life is hard, and so boy, got to get everything straight and talk to one another, right? Otherwise, then your misunderstandings will just continue. You got to talk. You can talk things out. If you can't talk things out, it just means war. So talk. Face everything.
Well, thank you for your yes to saying, Lord, wherever you want me. And if that means public speaking, if that means podcasting,
Yeah, that's how that started too.
here you
Yeah.
are.
Oh, and I like podcasting. I didn't know I'd like this. I like it. I like it. I like meeting people who are willing to share their thoughts. And, you wrote a book, and now people know about this book. I liked your book. It Everything I learned about postmodernism and philosophy, it's such a big field. It's hard to get actually educated in that area successfully to understand what's going on today. So every little thing that I can do. So thank you for coming on my podcast and explaining to me, talking to me. I like your stories. Yeah, I like your stories. And stories are good.
We're made for stories.
Yeah. So I imagine good luck with your children.
You as well with your grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. All we can do is love them, trust them, point them in the right direction, in a beautiful, beautiful direction of wanting to be of service, loving God and wanting to be of service. Mm-hmm.
Amen. Thank you, Tammy.
Amen.